I'm Doug Willett, member of the subcommittee or the Committee for Electronic Voting. I want to welcome you here tonight for our little workshop. We are live streaming this on our Facebook page, and it'll be on the Sandoval video box, which is new, and hopefully we'll have a number of people look on. The Electronic Voting Committee was appointed by the board at its October meeting, and our task is to oversee the implementation of the vote that the board took earlier in the year to approve electronic voting in the community. And our job is to make sure that that is implemented correctly, that all the things are in place to make it successful, that the training that is necessary for those of us who will be participating is in place, and that everything runs smoothly. And so we have been meeting weekly since the October board meeting that created our committee. And in the course of that time, we have also created 3 subcommittees that are dealing with various aspects of the overall voting in Sandoval. We're taking the opportunity to look at the way our campaigns are conducted and what the various rules are that have never really been formalized for how to run a campaign in Sandoval. We'll be bringing some recommendations to the board on that. We have a second subcommittee that we're currently looking for volunteers for all of these. We have a second subcommittee that's going to be dealing with the annual meeting, and that is really a 2-parter. It involves, one, putting the packets together that have to go out in the mail of all the candidate information. We will have, despite our campaign to sign up people for electronic voting, realistically we realize we're going to have a significant part of the population who's going to continue to vote in a by paper ballot this year. And so we still have to put together packets to send out to a number of people. That group will be doing that, and that group will also be the group that will be counting the paper votes at the annual meeting. We need about 20 to 25 people for that, and I believe, Jerry, we're still looking for some folks to help us with that. And then the third subcommittee is the one that is most directly involved with electronic voting, and that is the one that Lee Brohl over here is heading up. And that one is involved with all the testing that needs to be done and all the training that needs to be done to do this whole project properly. The voting team, the core team, consists of Jerry Evans, who is our general manager. He is also, by virtue of his position, our election moderator. He's in charge of the overall election process, and so he is a very key member of our committee. From the board, Ron Spooner, who's been a principal champion of the electronic voting from day one, and is very anxious to make sure that it all works as well as it possibly can, is very much involved with everything we're doing. Marilyn Stout is the other board member who is working with us on this. Marilyn, as you may or may not know, is also a member of the Cape Coral City Council, and so she has a terrific background in elections and campaigns and all that kind of stuff. Denise Neifelt over here in the audience. Denise is our data manager. One of the critical components of doing this well is making sure that we have people's names and addresses and contact points, all of that in good order. You may or may not know it, but there are about 4 different sources of data for our community. Pope keeps a data set in Florida. That's the one, in Sarasota. That's the one that sends you your bill every month or every quarter. We have a system here called Club Essentials, which is our in-house database that is maintained by Tracy and the folks in the office. Believe it or not, Envira has a database that has a number of our names and so forth. And a few months ago, the Communications Committee added the the constant contact software, which allows us to send out our email blasts and our newsletter, and that contains a database of all our residents. So the trick Denise has to perform is to keep those 4 databases in line so they have the same information, because they don't right now electronically talk to each other. And so every one of them has to be maintained manually and brought up to speed and so that's a big project, and Denise is the one who does the most of that work. And then finally, over here, Lee Brohl is our 5th member, and she's our most important member. I think the rest of us would agree, because Lee is the one who knows what's going on. Lee is a trained project manager. She spent 35 years or so with, is it Federal Express? Oh, UPS. All right. As an IT project manager, and she has us so organized that I see on occasion that when she starts going over her spreadsheets that Jerry's eyes start to cross, and we have to give him some coffee to get him back on track so we can keep up. But Lee is a terrific asset to our community, and she's doing a great job on this electronic voting stuff. And she's going to be doing the bulk of this presentation once I turn it over to her. We have certain objectives for the electronic voting. We're trying to be realistic about how much we can expect in this first year. And I think when Robert, was it Rob? Is it Rob Caves?
Yes, Rob Caves.
When Rob was here and made his initial presentation to the board, he talked about in the first year, you can expect to get about 30% of the community voting this way. We set an objective that and that you can also expect to see an increase in the number of people participating in the election. Sandoval has 1,225 houses, so there are 1,225 votes in the community, because there's 1 vote per house. Of that 1,225, in the last election, last March, there were 889 people formed a quorum. So we can assume there were 889 people who actually voted last time. So we have a significant number of non-voting population at the moment, as many as 500 or 600. Of the 889 people who voted the last time, if we use that as our target to put our objective against, then we are interested in seeing if we can increase that number by 5% this year. And one of the things that Attorney Cave said was that you'll get around 30% the first year, and you should get up to you'll get up to 70 to 80% the second year. Because people will see that it's not the scary thing they thought it was, and we'll get much more people coming on board. The reality is, and we're still several weeks from the close of the registration period, thus far as of tonight, we have 385 people who have given us the consent form. In fact, I thought I saw my friends from France just sign up tonight. So we may have 386 people, households, who are going to be voting electronically. And that's a very, very healthy result. We're very, very pleased with that. That's better than we expected to do, quite honestly. We also have 406 people as of tonight who have voted to receive electronic notice. So we have about 25 people who have agreed to electronic notice who are not going to be voting electronically. They're going to do the paper ballot, but they're willing to do the electronic notice. Every person we get to do the electronic notice helps us reduce the cost of our postage expense. And believe it or not, we spend over $20,000 a year on mailings. And then there are other associated costs with paper balloting. So we're hoping that over the course of the next couple of years, we can reduce that $20,000 significantly. And then the other objective we have is to increase residents' confidence in this. There are an awful lot of myths out there. There's a lot of conspiracy theories. There's a lot of conjecture about the security of this kind of voting. And one of our objectives as a committee is to see if we can reduce that level of disinformation, that level of anxiety. There are some very real issues you need to deal with, but those issues are manageable, and there are things we think we have solutions for. Okay, we began our work with the first task. It was to decide which system we would use, and Becker Pelikoff, as a law firm, has a division called Becker Ballot. And what we did under Lee's direction is we started off, like all good projects, by defining what our requirements are. What do we need before we jump to what do we want to buy? And so we spent some time documenting our requirements. We ended up reviewing a total of 4 different software packages. We did a comparative analysis of those 4 packages, and we ultimately made the decision to recommend that we purchase or license, if you will. It's a licensing, yearly licensing of Becker Ballot, which is the subsidiary of Becker Pelikoff law firm. That made sense, one, because it's a state-of-the-art product. They're already involved with about 20 or 25 other homeowners associations. This idea of electronic voting for homeowners associations is only 2 or 3 years old, and the Florida statutes allowed this again just a couple of years ago. So it's still very new in a lot of communities. Becker Ballot is one of the leaders in the field at this point, so that made sense from that standpoint, and it made sense from the standpoint that they are tied into our law firm that does all of our legal work, and therefore we have connections with that firm that allows us to pick up the phone and get answers very quickly. And so the decision was made to select Becker Ballot, and that is what you will see if you sign up for this. What we've accomplished to date is we've done an awful lot of identifying the risks and the issues involved, and we're working on every one of those issues. We'll talk about many of those tonight. We have a detailed project schedule developed. We are developing workflow processes so that we actually have diagrams of all the steps that take from the day you walk into the front office with a paper ballot, everything that happens to that paper ballot until it gets to the yacht club and gets opened by our vote counters. And we are doing similar things with the electronic ballot. We know every step of the way what has to be done and every decision that has to be made as it works through the process. We've sent out the electronic voting consent forms. That's the one that all of you have received, hopefully. And if you don't, we have more here tonight. We can certainly share them with you. This is the one that you need to make the selection that you're going to vote electronically or you're going to continue to vote in paper ballot form. And then the second part of it is where you make a decision whether you want to receive your election information electronically. And so that's our electronic notice section. And you can either choose both of those, either one of those, or neither of those. And all 3 are perfectly acceptable. Yes?
Questions or wait till the end? How are we doing this?
I think if we could wait to the end, if you don't mind?
No, not at all.
Okay. All right, so those are out. We sent out, we hope we sent out 1,425 of those, but we do have a few people reporting they didn't receive them. And if you are one of those people who didn't receive one, we certainly want to know that because we can get them to you very, very quickly. Those are coming back. As I mentioned, we have somewhere around 400 of those returned at this point. We didn't expect to get them all back, but you have until, is it 72 hours before the election to return them? Okay, so you actually can return them and elect to vote electronically right up to 72 hours before the election. The election is on March 12th. So up until, let's say, March 9th, you still have time to make this choose this option. Obviously, we would much prefer to have you send that back now, okay? Not waiting until the very last minute. We purchased a tool. We now have the tool in-house. Jerry will be demonstrating the tool a little later in the meeting, and we're able to work directly with it now, and that gives us the ability now to start testing the tool and testing for different scenarios. And Lee will be talking about that. Okay, some of the work that we need to do on the tool, and when I say tool, I mean Becker Ballot, the voting system. We need to test the data downloads to make sure we get all our information into Becker and it all comes back properly. And Lee is designing a whole testing scheme, and her subcommittee will be working through a whole bunch of beta tests, as they call them, to make sure everything is working properly. In fact, we hope, we plan to do small tests where we actually have a small group of people go through a voting process. And if we get it done and all of this done in time, we hope that we might have an opportunity to have a broader test down the line that would allow you as an electronic voter to actually test out how the system works and feel satisfied you know how to do it when it comes time to cast your actual vote. What do you need to do to help us in this process? Well, first of all, if you returned your consent form, that's the most important first step. You can do that in several ways. You can walk into the office and hand it to Tracy. You can mail it to our street address, which is on the bottom of the form, I think, I hope. And or you can take a photograph of your form with your iPhone, copy both sides, and then scan it, or send those to Tracy via email. Or you can ask one of the neighborhood reps or anyone else to drop it off for you. But the best way to do it is to get it in during office hours and make sure that Tracy is in receipt of it. If you're going to be using a desktop, a laptop, an iPad, or mobile phone, and by the way, you can use any of those devices. You can sit on your lanai, you can be in your spa, you can vote from your living room couch, your choice. You can do it while you're waiting in line to get across the bridge or whatever. But you got to make sure you have Wi-Fi connection and a secure Wi-Fi connection and a good network connection. How do you access Becker Ballot? The email address that you give us on your consent form is the key to this. All of those email addresses will be filed with Becker Ballot, and they will then in turn be sending you an email indicating that it's time for you to take a look at what's going on, and the balloting is going to be open. Balloting will start, by the way, on February 12th, okay? And you'll have essentially a 30-day period to cast your vote. At the same time on February 12th, the paper ballots will be going out as well. So the election period, the voting period, will extend for 30 days. And any time during that window, you're free to both file a paper ballot or file electronic ballot, whichever form you're deciding to do. Okay, how I learn the Becker ballot in time? How am I going to learn this, what to do? It's actually very simple. Once you receive a notice from Becker Ballot that it's time for you to cast your vote, all you'll need to do is log on, put in a secure password, and we'll talk about the security of passwords later, but that's that's an absolutely critical piece of feeling secure about the security of the system. And then cast your vote. Once you put in your password, you'll come up to the ballot. Jerry will show you later how easy all this is. So we're going to be setting up a lot of training and a lot of more information as we go along, but really the process is a lot simpler than the explanation. Okay, so let me turn it over to Lee at this point, and she'll take you through some of our other key pieces of information. Lee?
Okay, can you guys hear me? All right, I'm Lee, AKA the Grim Reaper and the Thanksgiving turkey, if y'all saw that. That's me. And here I am now doing something else. Go ahead, Jerry, you can slide to the next slide. Okay, so I hear a lot of rumblings around there about, how secure is everything, that I'm going to be doing. I do this, I do that. Well, I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about the security aspect of it. So how secure is it? Do you do online banking? How many of you guys do online banking? Pretty much almost everybody in the room. Okay, next. Do you purchase products online? How many? Wow, overwhelmingly, the whole group. Do you have your HOA quarterly fee coming out of your bank directly? Okay, next one. Do you pay your bills online? Wow, okay, you guys, you all already know then. You all are ready for this. If you do all those, this voting is actually a lot less risky than what you're doing today. And why is it? There's no financial information. We talked about our emails. That's how you're going to get in and sign in. No financial information, your email's there. No account numbers, no bank account, checking account, nothing. And no credit card info. And those are the things that particularly people feel less secure about, but yet we do a whole lot of it in our society today. So what we're doing here, none of that data. It's a lot less risky. But however, even though it is, and there's no financial data, security is still our concern, because we know there's a lot of rumbling still going on around security. So we want to make you feel good and secure about it. So is it secure? I'm not going to stand here and tell you that it's 100% foolproof, because no system is. But we're going to be doing the best job that we can to make sure it's as secure as possible for you. The benefits far outweigh the risk. Again, there's no financial data in this. Issues have existed, and they continue to exist with even having the paper ballots today. Because if you think about your paper ballots today, how do you know someone doesn't make a second copy? Someone else might be making putting a different lot number on it. I mean, all kinds of different things can happen. It could get lost. It could get handed over. I mean, many, many things can happen. Consider the cost of your online banking getting compromised versus the vote. So if your online banking gets compromised, you got to go through a whole lot of work to prove, right, that you weren't at fault, that something else happened there, and to regain those funds back. Whereas with this voting, it's a whole lot different, because again, there's no financial. And I'm going to talk to a little bit about what the data is on this. Consider generally that compromising occurs with the intent of gaining financially. Generally, people, when they want to get into a system and hack it, it's because they want to gain something monetary out of it. No one's going to gain anything monetarily out of this voting system. That's just a fact. Steps the product vendor is including. So we're doing some things on our side to make sure that it stays secure through the process. The vendor, likewise, which was also a part of our requirements that we had for the vendors. But things that they're doing, for those who are tech savvy, uses SSL, which is a secured socket layer, and data encryption for your login access and your password. And simply put, if you're on the network and you see a little HTTPS, or you see a little lock on it, that means it's using SSL. It has a data security on it. And basically, when you get into it, everything that you're keying in to that system from your ID password on is protected. Daily data backups and redundancy. So we're not housing a server here. We're actually going to be on their server. And they actually have redundant servers set up, so if one fails, the backup is still available. So all the data, while you're doing your votes, is mirroring over. And so if something happens, we still have that data. Sandoval will have our own database. So as you know, this is a product, and since we don't have our own servers, that means other people are on those same servers. Within the servers, they're separating actual databases, and we'll have our own database that's Sandoval data only, so it won't be mixed with any other HOA or anyone else out there that has this tool to vote. Your vote is truly a secret ballot. And the reason I say that is because the data that Jerry and the lawyers, our legal representation, have access to is only the total counts. They're not going to know that whoever voted for lot number 5 voted for John Doe over here. They're not going to know that. They're only going to know the total counts. The other thing that they will know will be stuff like how many people have registered to actually vote electronically. So how are we doing? That's how we're going to be comparing against what our objectives are for this tool. Only the vendor, very important, this very last phrase here. Only the vendor has full data access. They're the only ones that know how anybody votes. We're just going to see the totals in the end, okay? Now, we will also be able to see some live streaming, but it's at totals again, not who voted how, just in the totals. All right, what can you do for protecting your own security as well? So we all have a share responsibility in this. Use your own Wi-Fi, not a public Wi-Fi. That's just your safest, so do it at home. Or if you're at your neighbor's house, more secure personal Wi-Fi. Create a password that is tightly secured. And by that, I'm going to give you a few tips. If you write it down, keep it in a secure location. I know it's hard to remember, particularly if you've got access to 4 or 5, 6 or more systems, to remember what that is. Keep that piece of paper wherever you have it written somewhere else. For passwords, please, please, please don't use it. Even go back and assess even where you have financial records and systems and passwords. Don't use names, birth dates, where you grew up, what high school you were at, what city you're from, those types of things, your anniversary dates. Those are all things that are very, very easy to guess. Use instead, I'm going to give you this concept. So you take the first letter of each word of a sentence and then add some symbols. So think up a sentence. In this case, example, I love to cruise every year. I do. I know I do. I don't know about you guys. But then I take that first letter of each one, the I, L, T, C, E, Y, and then I just added some symbols off on the side of it. It doesn't say anything about me. You don't know anything. It doesn't have my name. It's not a birthday, not an anniversary. It doesn't say Kentucky because I'm a Kentucky girl. So there's a nice little tip for password protection. So there are those things that you can do. So now what's going to happen? So as your consent forms are coming in, Tracy is logging certain information about them to know that, one, you've turned it in, and what's that email that's going to be important for voting. Because that email then is going to be going in the system. Once it's in the system and we've activated it, you're going to get an email to that address, that email address, and it's going to look similar to this up here. So here's a couple screenshots. Or go back to the first one. It's going to come out and say, hey, we've got an invitation for you at Becker Ballot. So that's the name of it, how you'll see it, all caps the ballot. And it'll have our community association on it. Hey, our Sandoval Community Association has invited us to set up an account. Now you see this set up account is in blue. That means that's a link, hyperlink. So you'll click on that link, and then what's going to happen, you can go ahead to the next screen. What's going to happen is you're going to see this screen or you're going to end up getting this login screen, but you're going to put in a password, use those security, and then you can test it into that. Now, if you don't get your email, check your spam, because it could be sitting in your spam mail. And if so, you'll see this in it, and then just do the report not spammed, and that way you will no longer get it in spam, and it'll go into your regular inbox. Okay? Everybody follow me on that? All right. If not, you can always see me, and I can help you out. Okay. So now that's the simplified version of how you're going to register. Once you register, as I said, go ahead and log in just to make sure you can get into the system. And you're good. And then you just hold tight for a little while, because then what's going to happen is then the ballot's going to come out, and you'll get a notification in your email that says, hey, there's a vote out here that you need to attend to. And there'll be a time frame put on it. All that information will be in there. And that's what Jerry's going to take us into now and show us what happens after that point. Jerry?
Okay, I'm going to sign in as an administrator correctly.
Yeah, you can sign in. Now, when you all get, when the vote comes out, you'll have an email, and the link will be in it. So you'll just click on that blue hyperlink, and it'll take you straight to it. Whereas Jerry's actually on the internet, and he's put in the whole link name and everything else, but you'll actually get the link in there, so you just go straight to it.
Okay, so we have 5 votes in here, and these were the purposes as self-explanatory. These were some tests that we've done. And I'll kind of show you a little bit of background into the vote itself. In fact, what I think I'd like to do, you want me to go ahead and create the vote so they can see it, or do you want me to show them this one, or how do you
Just
want?
go ahead and show them how to, actually, they'll click on a vote. So this screen right here has a whole bunch of votes in it. When you see the screen, you'll have one with the, because that's the election coming up, and it'll have a name on it that'll signify, you'll know it's the election. And then, because you could actually be doing several votes for different things at the same time, but we'll just have just the one in there. So even though you see 4 or 5 on there, so we'll just go in and you'll click on it.
Start the vote. Please vote for the candidate. It's just simple. We'll have a picture of each candidate. We'll also, in here, we'll have their bio, and there's a little check mark right here next to it. And right here where it says, please vote for 4 candidates of your choice to serve as board of directors, we're actually going to copy and paste the exact verbiage of the vote that's coming out in paper form, so there will be no ambiguity at all. And then in this case, we're going to have 4 board of directors open for the test vote. We put 5 guys down here. You can tell I like the Cowboys. And so it's as simple as this is exactly how you're going to see it. You'll just depress whichever ones you want to vote for. And got to have Stahl back in there. And there's my 4. And then it'll give you an option right here to review your choices. And this is what you'll see on your screen. And then you can save your votes. And that's it. And at this point, you will get an email within moments to the email you signed up to, and it'll have a report on what you've just done and who you voted for.
And the other thing too is when the vote is open, so we'll actually, within the tool, we'll open and say it starts on this date and it'll close at this date and have time frames put on it. You will also, even if you haven't gone in and already voted, as it gets closer time to the annual meeting, you'll get a couple other reminders that will also come out from the system. They'll say, hey, you haven't voted yet, and you've got 3 days left. And then there'll be another one at 24 hours before, and it's going to say, hey, you got 24 hours before the vote closes, so don't forget to go vote. So make sure that you do pay attention to those, and you make sure that you, your very first one, if it's in spam, make sure you turn that off so that you'll be getting those notifications.
And also, you'll also see different, as Lee spoke to, the different dates. In this particular test date, we did December 31st as the actual meeting, where we opened the registration today, and we closed it a couple of days before the meeting. And then that's for registration only, nothing to do with voting. And then the voting itself happens in this case to open up on the same day, and it closes an hour before the meeting at 5 o'clock, whereas the meeting's at 6 o'clock. So in this particular vote, what you'll end up seeing is a registration period is going to open prior to the actual voting, and that's to give everybody a good opportunity to get in there and register and before the actual vote starts. And then the electronic voting will stop, like I said, 1 hour before the meeting, and the paper ballot voting will be as it was last year, where you can actually take your paper ballot to the meeting and vote there.
And the other thing too, with as you saw in that example, he had the pictures. You'll also, the bios of each candidate will also be in there as well. So you'll see pictures and may put a small blurb about each person on there. Yeah, that's part of the standard stuff that's going on right now, part of that work. But you'll also have that information there too. in case you see the face and you're like, I'm not sure, right? But definitely don't wait till the last minute because that window will close. And you got to make sure, one, you're registered in time to vote. You put that consent form in, register. It gives us time to get your information into the system so that you can get the email back in time to do that. So definitely do not wait till the last minute as we get closer. And then you get so close you want to get those reminders. It'll be kind of hitting you just as you sign on.
And Doug's communications committee group will be sending out e-blast all on the way to prompt you guys on those pertinent dates.
Yep.
Very simple. This is one of the simplest things. I couldn't believe how simple it was. So very happy with it.
Okay, you want to go back to presentation material?
Yep.
Okay, and as you catch up to which one we were at, as Doug was mentioning earlier, testing is real important for us as well because we know we have lots of scenarios. Basically, it's one lot equals one vote, but we know that we have people who own multiple lots. We know we have some people that want to vote electronically, some people that want to vote manually, and so forth. So all that is important information, data that we have to keep to make sure that we have the checks and balances in. So as part of our testing, we'll be doing a lot of scenarios to make sure that we don't get duplications, the same ID, trying to do 2 different votes when only one lot. There's different things we put in the tool to be able to set up for that. And also inclusive of the manual process also. So while we'll be doing some checks on what's going on in the data perspective, we've got to balance with the manual piece. So that's where a lot of the processes and things Doug was talking about that we're working on. And all of those processes will also be, as soon as we've got them all finished, they'll be posted out on our Live Sandoval site too. So you can always look at and see what the processes are behind everything as well. So anyway, back to the presentation. If you do choose the paper ballot, although if I have my tap shoes on, I'd tap for you because it's just that easy, just to tap right through the electronic. The paper ballot, yes, we know it's easy. We've all done it. It's easy. Take a piece of paper, write it, throw it into the mail, right? Or hand it to somebody. If you do, a few things just to keep in mind. Follow the directions that's given your mailing exactly to a T. You may turn it into the office. Tracy will take care of it and check on it. Make sure your consent form is what it is, that you didn't want to do an electronic vote. You can send it in the mail, give it to the neighborhood rep. Paper ballots will be handled by the office staff only, so the actual check is starting when they get it. All the paper ballots will then be marked with the date and time received actually on the envelope and then put in a lockbox. And one of the reasons for that is that we want to also check in case someone actually has voted in electronically. We get that paper ballot. Again, this is a check and a balance. And we look and go, oh, no, wait a minute. They've already voted. They voted on this day. Okay? Or they said that they wanted to do an electronic consent. They haven't voted yet, but I got a paper ballot. Well, then that means this vote counts. So now we have to deactivate their electronic to vote. So those kinds of checks and balances that are in place. No ballots are open until the day of the annual meeting. So they're put in the box, and then they'll go off to the meeting that day. And that's where the other team that Jerry's heading up, the subcommittee, is going to be working on that part of the process. And then for ensuring there's no duplication of voting, just like I said here, the consent form is what's important because that's what tells us which direction you're going to go. We've got the electronic data to know which way you are going and which way you're.
Okay, I happen to have a relative who lives in Sandoval who received 2 ballots in the mail last year. The ballots were stuck together. The second one was stuck to the first one, and who was ever doing the stuffing, which is human error, ended up putting 2 ballots in her mailing. She turned the second one in, thank goodness, but she could have easily voted twice. And there's no way to know how many of those things occurred. We try to do all we can to prevent that from occurring. People were collecting because they didn't trust the handling of the ballots up here. They were collecting them in neighborhoods and turning them in bulk. And in some cases, we're putting a box on their porch for people in the neighborhood to drop the ballot in. How secure is that? Anybody walking by can tamper with that ballot. In the same fashion, and I think this is more rumor or hyperbole than anything, but I had one woman I was talking to the other day who told me that in her neighborhood, there was somebody going around door to door asking people if they're going to vote, and if they weren't voting, they were asking for their ballots. Now, I choose to believe, whoa, turn my microphone on. I choose to believe that that's probably an exaggeration, but the paper ballot system has its limitations as well. And we're trying to find ways to tighten that up this year. For example, this year, our intent is that the paper ballots that are brought into the office will only be handled by staff, by Tracy and possibly the people who work with Tracy. They will not be handled by residents, which is what we've done in the past.
The log as well.
I'm sorry?
The log as well. The log of votes as
Oh,
well.
yes. And the log, yeah, the log in which it's recorded who voted and who didn't, which again is always open to suspicion that somebody's manipulating that, that will only be handled by our staff as well. So we're tightening up the paper security. We're doing all we can on this, on the electronic side, and hopefully we'll have a nice, clean election, and may the best woman or man win. You had a question.
Yeah, how much did this paper ballot cost us? We bought the license, right?
$350.
Yeah.
And then there is a yearly renewal?
It's a yearly fee, isn't it, Jerry?
Yeah.
How much is it yearly then?
It would be the same unless there's a price change for the, you know, there could be a nominal service price change.
And I will add that with the paper ballots, our attorney has to sit there literally while those ballots are counted. So not only do we have the postage savings, we also have
System with the data files that we have to send them, you know, like on the candidates' information and some of those, which will be files, and the potential of, say, for example, on one of your own devices, you know, hearing a unintended malicious piece of software when you log in. They actually have protection on their system as well, so that anything coming in, it's going to scan it and see it first too. So that's always a good piece, because you never know, you know, what can be hanging around on some laptops, you know, hidden that you don't know. So they'll actually have a little bit of extra security on anything that comes in as you're signing in as well.
Are there other questions?
I got sent actually a couple questions. I'll just run through them real quick if you don't mind. Some residents sent me different questions. What if I vote electronically and then try to vote with a actual paper ballot? That will be flagged, and it will be reconciled, so there's no chance that can happen. What if you own multiple properties? For each property, you'll be able to vote for whichever directors or whatever choice you would like for each property. What if there's multiple residents in my home? It's still one home, one vote. Will I ever be able to vote electronically twice in the same election? No, obviously. Will I have the same statutory protections to review or audit the vote as I did if I voted with a paper ballot? The answer is yes. You don't forego any statutory protections. You still can audit it. You have the same rights as someone who voted via paper ballot. How long can I vote electronically? Is it the same as the paper ballot? It'll be 5 p.m. on the day of the election. What if I lost my sign-up letter? How can I get a copy? You can get a copy at the clubhouse. We have them out with Linda. Can I change my vote electronically after I voted? The rules are the same electronically as paper. The answer is no. Once you voted, you voted. Will there be someone in the clubhouse to help walk me through the voting process? Yes, we anticipate having a computer here and someone here, one of Jerry's staff, to help walk individuals. You know, the first time it's always nice to have someone answer some questions. Do any residents have access to how people voted? The answer to that is no, including me. That's all the questions I had, so feel free to ask any questions.
My question is, has Becker sent out anything yet for us to register?
Not yet, no.
Okay, you'll notify us so
We
it
will
doesn't get
we will
lost in
notify you
spam?
guys and hand spoon feed you the entire direction, the way. Yep, absolutely.
We're collecting right now, Tracy is collecting all of these consent forms, putting together a database. We'll send that to Becker. We haven't sent it to them yet. Once they get it, they then will turn around and send something to you, and we'll announce that that is out there at the time.
Great question. We just actually discussed that Monday. When are residents going to start getting their emails saying, hey, because, and then I think what's going to happen is we'll have the initial batch. Then we're also going to get additional people signing up after that. So we're going to do it like every Wednesday up until the election. And we'll send, the communications committee will send out notification of that. So it'll be on a weekly basis. But thank you for the question.
Jack?
Ron, you mentioned that a resident today has the right to challenge under the paper ballot system.
Yes.
Feels there's been some malfeasance on it. So explain to me why it's necessary to have the clause that you waive, the waiver clause against the association pertaining to the voting. What's
Excellent question. Now, you're dealing with two separate issues here. You're dealing with a legal liability issue. For instance, if you were to use the gym and you were to break your finger or something, we require a waiver to protect the association from lawsuits. That language in there is strictly for lawsuits. If for some reason there's some malware or something that your computer gets infected while using the system. Now, we have no evidence this has ever occurred, but if that were to happen, there's a secondary protection there. So we're not in a situation where we can be sued for a product that we have no control over. Because as you know, attorneys will sue everybody. It's to protect our association from us working with a secondary company. Now, that is completely different than your ability to challenge or review the election. You have the same rights, and those are statutory rights that cannot be waived at all. I hope that answers your question. I'm happy to chat with you more about it.
It does, thanks. And the electronic notice, a lot of residents already receive all the notices electronically. Do they have to fill that out?
I can answer that.
Continue to do that, or is it
Yes.
continue regardless?
Yeah, no, well, I don't know that historically, oh, go ahead,
Yeah,
Jay.
I think what you may be referring to are the electronic notices that the communications sends out, whereas this electronic consent involves things like deed restriction violations, and any time that we are required by law to notice homeowners, whether it's an annual meeting or that's correct. Great point.
I'm just saying residents get that now. When if there's a meeting coming up and they get a copy of the agenda.
We're doing that as a courtesy, regardless, and it's not required statutorily.
So, like, don't assume that you can carry on receiving it.
Well,
I want to fill this out.
yeah, probably the best way to say it is if it's required statutorily to mail it, we no longer would be required to mail it. We can email it. Whereas we do a lot of things anyway that's not required by statute, and the plan would continue to receive them. But to your point, certainly I would sign up for it because, you know, we would save a lot of money in the mailings, and it just makes sense. If you're already receiving email blasts anyway, might as well receive these.
Yeah, I hope there's no confusion, but the residents, you might clarify that.
Things that you get in the mail,
You might
envelope, are what you're signing up for now to get electronically.
Correct.
Things that you're getting electronically now have nothing to do with what you're signing up for to get electronically. The things that you're getting, a letter, an envelope, the mail, is what will then start coming electronically to the city HOA vote.
And I don't think historically we have ever emailed anything out in terms of a director vote. That would be done this time.
Yeah, it's a little confusing, I guess. Okay, so two quick questions. Ron, you said that there was significant savings. Just give me a ballpark number of what you think the savings are going to be as a result of electronic voting.
Well, I can say I think we're at
20,000 for postage, we know.
20,000 roughly for postage. And our goal is to reach at least 500. At least that's my goal. It was originally 300, but we've far exceeded that.
The 20,000 plus is.
20,000 plus staff time, paper costs,
Envelopes.
envelope, you know, yeah.
Okay,
And-
one last question then.
And also the attorney's hours, because the attorney, we pay him, I think, $3.75 an hour to attend our election, and he literally sits there. Attorneys love it too. They sit there and they watch everyone count the votes and bill. So the hours we save where they're not counting those votes is also more money in our pocket.
Okay, so one quick last question. When you log on to cast your vote, right? Is there a timeout on that page? Will that, if you say, oh gosh, I better phone so-and-so and see what, like, have you got 3 minutes? Have you got 3 hours?
Good
or-
question. Good question. I think.
Excellent question.
I think that's something we will have to
Lee?
investigate.
Yeah, basically right now, there's, as you saw in that email, it was catered, it had the name of our association on it. So there's some personalization that'll be added to those emails when you come in. Now, we haven't actually tested to go through the process of getting the information for the vote. But what we anticipate is we know for sure that we'll get, there's 4 notifications that they do today, and that's one for you to register, one that will be, there's a vote out there ready for you to go vote, and that'll come out the day that the vote opens is the day that that one gets sent. And then there's the one that'll be the reminder for that you haven't voted yet. So you get it when the vote opens up. So we got 2 or 3 weeks or whatever in there, 4 weeks. You'll get it when it opens up, and as it gets closer to the time frame over here, you're going to get that reminder again as well. And then once you voted, then you'll get that notification that says you're complete.
Jack, I would,
Now,
yeah, I would assume like any system that they're gonna have a time period. If you log on and you don't respond within 10 minutes or 20 minutes, they're more than likely to shut down and let you come back
Just let
in.
us know in advance is what
Yeah,
I'm saying.
we'll
are you
definitely
talking
ask
about
that
once you're
question.
once you're in it?
Yeah.
And then if you get out of it and don't finish it?
No,
for
if you
example?
just, if the screen just
Okay.
stays stagnant and all of a sudden, like your Chase Bank,
Bill?
it will
Yeah.
log you out after a period.
Yeah.
Webinar we attended today, he did a sample vote. When he finishes voting, he has to hit save. Until you hit save, you have not voted. So if it times out, goes away, you can log back in.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Now, when you do, if that does happen and it times out on you, now what we've been told, but it'll be part of our testing, is that, so let's just say that you had to pick 4 people and you picked 2 and then it timed out on you. When you go back in, those 2 will still show that you've already voted for them. It's not official yet, but it'll just show that that was the keystrokes that you did.
I thought I heard it one time out.
It's not an official vote until you hit save.
Right.
Well, whatever, as long as people know that. Listen, just want to say, I'm impressed with all the hard work that everybody's done. This is great.
Thank you.
Well, Jack, if you would allow me, you and I were talking before the meeting. You come from a town in Canada where they've gone to electronic voting wholesale. Everybody in town has to
Wow.
vote electronically. How's that working out, if you wouldn't mind mentioning?
No, not at all. First of all, let me say that for snowbirds, having electronic voting is a really big plus, right? So, in the community, I mean, you had 2 choices. You could either vote on the internet, electronic on the internet, or you could phone, but there were no paper ballots. Okay, so how did it work out? Sorry to report, the actual number of people that voted went down somewhat. So, they were scratching their heads and saying, why?
Is this the first year? Is there one cycle?
This was the first year.
Okay.
And so they're scratching their heads now saying, well, what do we need to do? And there seems to be some suggestion that maybe we should have a paper as well as electronic, but they haven't made up their mind.
Yeah, I think that's our greatest benefit right now, and it's by statute, is that we're required to allow people to continue to vote via paper. So there's no reason our numbers should not increase.
Bill?
Just to follow up what was said before, there is an email too. Once you vote, the system will email you to confirm that you voted, and tell you how you voted. So you can say, yes, that's how I voted. So you get that confirmation back.
Or you could say no.
Do what?
You could say no, that's not right.
No, at that point, it's a report.
Once you save it, it's recorded at that time. Right, the other thing too, and it might be, I mean, you have to get to the root cause, but Could be too that as people move from a paper to electronic, there's always, that security of having this electronic sitting you like a bill. It sits there and it reminds you because it's still sitting there and you haven't done anything with it yet. And it could be a little bit of that too, and I'm sure that we'll probably experience some of that as well. But that's where us and the communication committee, as well as the system generating messages for you, we'll be sending things out. Doug continues his tips, but as it gets closer, we'll send out reminders. Hey, don't forget to vote. If you haven't sent your consent form in, giving you all those reminders too. So.
And this won't be
So
a
we'll try as
first
much.
run. We are doing we're setting up some samples and doing a number of test votes. And we're going to have a type of contrarian group that is literally going to try to look for the flaws. I own 2 properties. My wife wants to vote one way. I want to vote the other. What happens? We want to look at each of these situations and really challenge the system to find out if there are any flaws with it, just in the user interface on the front end. And then we're hoping in January to do a larger scale test vote just to walk people through the vote. So the first time, it isn't that new feeling. It isn't that what to expect. And frankly, that's why our initial number was 300, because to get people to sign up and respond and start using new technology is not easy. But I have to say this community has impressed me, and they have really, really embraced it so far, and that's why we moved it up almost double. So hopefully.
So what
Other
about,
questions? Yes.
what about if you own like the man and the woman and the man own the house, only one can vote?
Correct. Yes.
Awesome.
So the first one gets it.
Yes, sir.
How many people did you say signed up for voting now?
At this point, we have 386 because of my French friends. 87, all right.
Thank you.
Any more? 88. 387.
Could you ever have people that haven't signed up come to the clubhouse to get their ballots? That way to saving a lot of postage.
Well, number one, you have a number of people who aren't necessarily in Sandoval during the period who have a right to vote, so you have to provide them. I think the law says you have to
The
mail
law
them.
requires, it's
You have to get
statute.
the ballots to them. That's a nice idea, though, but I don't think we can,
That would make them sign up.
yes, yes, it would.
Can I have you stress a point?
Sure.
When they're filling out the consent forms, I'm getting, the boxes aren't checked, and the emails, sometimes can be unlegible.
Okay.
So it's important
Okay,
they take the time and not just
this is,
throw it on the desk and
yeah.
run out the door.
For the benefit not only of you here, but whoever's watching us on tape, if you fill out the consent form, we're getting a small number, but a number nonetheless, that are illegible. That either the no boxes were checked, or the email is not readable. So please take care. We'll try and track all those down and make personal contact. But if you haven't filled it out yet, please take care that reasonable people can read it, okay? Any other comments or questions? Okay, who won the pool? Yeah? Yeah, Jerry had, it was going to be a full house. I said it'd probably be less than 10. And I think Denise over there called about 25. So we're going to give Denise the frozen hot dog.
Before we leave, I've got one more thing.
What?
I've got one more thing.
Oh, all right, Jerry.
Before we leave, I just wanted to let you guys know of some key dates. Now, these aren't in stone yet, but there's no reason they won't change, but you will get notice on each of these. But right now, we're looking at January 15th. Right around the corner is the date the first notice will go out. And then January 29th would be the deadline for the candidate bios to come in. So that's a couple of weeks there to make your
Jerry,
decision.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but the 15th would be the first call to candidates?
It's the first notice of annual meeting,
Okay.
which includes the first call of candidates. And then the deadline for you to make the decision and turn in your candidate bios, if you want to run for board of directors, would be January 29th. So it's 14 days. And then we're planning a couple of weeks after that, or just about 10 days after that, to have a town hall meeting very similar to this, probably a lot more participation. And then February 12th, the second notice would go out because, of course, we get the candidate bios on the 29th. So about 12, 13 days later, we'll send out the second notice, which will have all the candidate information, their bios, their pictures, et cetera. And then February 19th, about a week later, Doug's group is going to do a really big article in the newsletter on all the candidates and the voting. And then the next day on February 20th, we're planning on having our first of two candidate events. We're calling them question and answer events for all the candidates. And then 9 days later, we're planning on having a second candidate event, probably a little bit more social, informal, outdoors, we're thinking. And then, of course, the annual meeting is on March 12th. So what all this means, basically, I think the key here is February 12th, you will know who the candidates are. March 12th will be the meeting. So it's basically a 30-day period for the campaigning and the decisions to be made. So, and again, these are soft, but we, again, right now have no reason to think that we won't follow this timeline. But we will send out information on each of these key dates via e-blast as they approach.
And
Let me just close by saying Denise has copies of the forms. If any of you need help filling them out as you leave, she'd be more than happy to give you a hand. Tracy is here as well. And thank you very much for attending. We appreciate your interest, and hopefully we'll all cast the ballot the way we're most comfortable with, and we'll get a much larger turnout this year than we have in the past. Thank you.
Thank you.